We became independent in 2002, basically having to build a country literally from the bottom up. The country had been razed to the ground, all the infrastructure destroyed, the institutions were also destroyed. So now we have a totally different stage now in our state building. We have an economy, we have solid state institutions, a vibrant democracy, and member of ASEAN. In 20 years, we have basically transformed our country into a useful member of the international community.
Welcome to this economic roundtable hosted by Asia Pacific Economics on the economic outlook for Timor Leste. My name is Rajiv Biswas, and I am the CEO of Asia Pacific Economics. I am really delighted to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Alexandre Tilman, the Ambassador of Timor Leste in Singapore, to discuss the economic outlook for Timor Leste. Ambassador Tilman, it is a great honor to have you at our roundtable dialogue to discuss the economy of Timor Leste. Let me start by asking you about Timor Leste's relations with ASEAN. It was a historic moment for ASEAN when Timor Leste became the 11th member of ASEAN at the ASEAN Leaders Summit in October 2025. What was the path towards accession, and what are the key economic and social development implications for Timor Leste from becoming a member of the ASEAN family of nations?
Hello, good morning, Rajiv. First, before I start answering your question, please allow me to say some word of thanks to you for inviting me to your podcast and to greet your listeners and to let you know how pleased I am to be doing this podcast and to be talking about Timor Leste. To go to your first question about ASEAN, look, we are in this region of Southeast Asia. This is where we belong, both historically, geographically, and culturally. Our vision of being part of ASEAN is not something that we thought of after independence in 2002. But this has always been our aspiration, going as far back as 74, 75, when we first were given the opportunity to choose to become an independent country. Unfortunately, history did not turn out as what we had expected, and we had to wait for another 24 years. So the journey has been long, which is expected. We became independent in 2002, basically having to build a country literally from the bottom up. The period leading up to our independence was marked with a lot of violence and destruction. The country had been razed to the ground, all the infrastructure destroyed, all the institutions were also destroyed. And we were under UN administration for the first 2 years after the separation from Indonesia. The path was long, but it was expected. However, we also had support from our ASEAN neighbors. I have to mention our nearest neighbor, a country with whom we shared a lot of history, Indonesia. Indonesia has been one of our greatest supporters in our journey towards ASEAN membership, which began in early 2005, 2006. So in 2011, we were accepted as formally as an observer member of ASEAN. This is before we were accepted. So the path had been laid in 2002 for membership in the near future. And in 2023, we were given the roadmap. ASEAN agreed on a roadmap for us to become a member, and the membership was supposed to be formalized in either 24 or 25, but it finally came in October 2025. The journey towards ASEAN membership came about due to efforts from all the ASEAN member states as well. The journey involved a lot of alignment of our legislation with ASEAN. We had to also upgrade our infrastructure, our connectivity, and build our institutions, our human resource capacity. And yet, we still have a long road before we can enjoy the full benefits of an ASEAN membership. But again, countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia in particular have been very helpful. in our journey, as well as the support, not just the political support, but also technical support from the rest of ASEAN members.
Mr. Ambassador, how would you describe Timor-Leste's living standards and economic development back in 2002 at the time of independence? And how has that been transformed by 2026?
In 2002, we were faced with a lot of destruction. Basically, we were about to build a state which we inherited, and it was devoid of infrastructure, of institutions, where majority of the population was still displaced. But in terms of development, it was at a time when our economy was literally non-existent. The literacy rate was only about 40%. Our life expectancy was less than 60. So now we have, of course, a totally different stage now in our state building. Our literacy rate is over 70%. Our life expectancy is 70 years plus. We have an economy. We have solid state institutions, a vibrant democracy, a vibrant economy, and member of ASEAN. In 20 years, we have basically transformed our country into a useful member of the international community.
Mr. Ambassador, the economic development of Timor-Leste over the past 2 decades has been closely linked to the oil and gas exports from the Bayu Undan offshore oil and gas fields. What has been the contribution of oil and gas from the Bayu Undan project to Timor-Leste's economy and the economic development path since independence?
The proceeds from the Bayu Undan has been much a blessing for us. For a country that emerged out of total destruction without an economy, it would have been difficult for us to finance our reconstruction, to build state institutions, to provide the services to our population, education, health, build our infrastructure. The proceeds from the Bayu Undan oil field, from our resources, have been the linchpin of our economy, of our development. We have benefited from over, I believe, $20 billion that have gone into our economy. And then it did not, of course, come to our economy directly when we developed the oil field. We also established a sovereign wealth fund, which helped us to manage the proceeds from the oil and gas. All the revenue from our oil and gas field were directly deposited into our petroleum fund. And then the proceeds can only go into our state expenditure through budget approvals, which is debated in the parliament, etc. The petroleum fund itself has been growing. We have had withdrawal from more than $10 billion for the last, since its inception in the 2007 or 8. Revenue stream started to pour in around 2015, 2016, and has been growing steadily with average return of up 5%. In 2024 alone, the return on the petroleum fund was over $1 billion. Just in the first couple of months this year, it's almost $200 million already accumulated. The petroleum fund, or the revenue from the oil and gas field, also helped us to fund a lot of our reconstruction and development. It also served as a fiscal buffer on our economy. It helped us to avoid the debt in a trap. We as a nation, we have very low debt, actually, thanks to the proceeds from the oil and gas field. So I think in one way we have managed it very, very carefully. There is also a downside to it, which we can discuss more.
Indeed, after many years of production, Bayu Undan field has become depleted. What are the prospects for the development of other oil and gas projects? And what is the status for the future development of the Greater Sunrise project, which has very large gas and condensate reserves?
I mean, it's an ongoing negotiation between our government and Australian government has practically concluded. One of the major milestones was the agreement between our two countries on the maritime border, which also provided us with certainty of what lies in our jurisdiction and whatnot. So that had been very helpful. So the next phase of the negotiations is around a development concept. Of course, we believe that the resources should be piped to our country for an onshore processing center for the oil and gas. We had already a couple of studies that have proven the viability of such a development concept. I feed financial investment decision. It should be forthcoming by end of this year or around next year, and the construction of the infrastructure and everything should go from there, and then we expect the first delivery of the gas around early 2030s.
Due to the Middle East conflict, Qatar, which exported around 20% of world LNG prior to the beginning of the conflict, has declared force majeure on its gas exports, and a significant part of its production will take some years to restore due to damage during the conflict. Given the disruption of oil and gas flows from the Middle East, how is the changing geopolitical landscape increasing the long-term attractiveness of future oil and gas exports from Timor-Leste for Asian gas importing nations?
I don't want to see the conflict in the Middle East where a lot of destruction is taking place. A lot of innocent people are being affected as an opportunity for us to make gains. I think it's a tragedy what's happening now in the Middle East. Even if it makes the prospects of our of our own oil and gas development brighter. But in any way, I hope that the conflict ends soon, that peaceful solution is found, and everybody come to the negotiating table, and we go back to the basic rule that we should solve our differences peacefully. But otherwise, it might have some upside to our prospect. But in any case, I think we also have other important resources that we're trying to develop. We don't want to be a country that is reliant on oil and gas, whereas we have other potentials like tourism, agriculture. We are also strategically located between ASEAN, Australia, and the Pacific. These are things that we are also looking at to potentially explore to balance out our reliance on oil and gas. At the moment, we have launched a few initiatives around, things like blue economy. This is a initiative that has been launched by our Prime Minister himself to look at ways of exploiting our marine resources sustainably, through fisheries, tourism, etc. And we also have other prospects like onshore mining, as there have been some minerals that have already been identified. Now, a number of companies are actively prospecting for these minerals. But otherwise, if the exploitation of the oil and gas in our Timor Sea, goes ahead as planned, it will also be a huge boon for us. But these are, as always, these are resources that need to be managed, carefully to use that resource to develop other sectors in our economy, our human resources in particular. The prospect is great, but at the same time, we're also putting in a lot of effort to diversify our economy away from oil and gas.
One of the great achievements of the Timor-Leste government was the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund, which accumulated financial assets from oil and gas revenue. How has this fund contributed to Timor-Leste's economic development, and what are the near-term prospects for this fund?
Yes, the Petroleum Fund has been our main source of funding for our development. It has funded up to 90% of our state expenditure since its inception, really, basically. So it has helped us to build our infrastructure, to pay for our social expenditure, to bring peace in the country. For example, in 2006, we had a breakdown in law and order. There was a conflict that erupted which also created a lot of displaced people. The government managed to help people return to their homes and their villages was to use some financial incentives. And we could only do that, thanks to the Petroleum Fund. Now is the time for us to think beyond the Petroleum Fund, to think about diversifying our economy and not relying on the Petroleum Fund as our only source of income.
As you mentioned, the government of Timor-Leste is seeking to diversify the economy towards other industries, including mining and tourism. What are the industries that offer opportunities for economic diversification, which are seen as the top priority areas? And what role are investors from other ASEAN countries playing so far in this diversification process?
We have come to the realization early on that we cannot rely on the proceeds from the oil and gas or the Petroleum Fund indefinitely. There have been a lot of talks, a lot of analysis. They have already shown that at the rate at which we are withdrawing from the Petroleum Fund, that it will be depleted in around 5 to 8 years' time. We know what the potentials are, especially in tourism, for example. We are not at the moment a tourism hotspot, and there's no way we can compete with the hotspots in the region from Thailand to Indonesia, Bali, which is well renowned as a tourism destination. But we look at our own source of wealth in that area, and we're thinking about making it a tourism industry that is maybe exclusive, complementary to what exists in the region, unique. These are things that we believe there are great potentials in. Otherwise, we are also looking at other sources for diversification, such as recently we have auctioned out a few blocks for prospectus. The response has been great. And at the moment, we have a few companies from Australia that is actively engaged in exploration of minerals in the country, and there have been some hopeful signs. Mineral resources such as limestone, manganese. We may be able to produce some minerals such as copper, rare earth elements, etc. And then otherwise, we are also looking into fisheries. This is as part of our blue economy drive, and agriculture as well, renewable energy, and connectivity. We have a port that we in Timor that which hopefully can expand to service regions beyond Southeast Asia into the Pacific, for example. We are also look to attract other industries such as shipbuilding. A Japanese shipbuilding firm has been in serious negotiations with us where they plan to set up a shipyard to service ships from the region. So the prospects of diversifying our economy is there. These are things that will not happen in the short term, but something that we are continually aiming at.
You mentioned mining as an important area of diversification for Timor-Leste's economy. And Timor-Leste has reserves of important minerals such as copper, gold, and rare earths, to name a few. Timor-Leste currently has opened a second round of mining license permits for international mining companies. So how significant do you expect that mining will be for Timor-Leste's future economic development?
Mining is certainly an area that we are seriously looking into. But of course, mining also comes with its own perils. Its impact on the environment, the fact that it might not produce a whole lot of employment because these days, all the mining operations are done by machines. It can also bring other social, issues. We only have to look at places like Africa where, a lot of people are engaged in mining for gold, for example. They are exploited. There are a lot of dangers. So, it's an area that we are treading carefully. But, at the same time, it also promises to bring us jobs, infrastructure development, some export revenue. It's one of the elements of our economic diversification. At the moment, we have clear signs of at least two proposed mining operations in Timor, mining for limestone and marble.
How is the Timor-Leste government aligning its national environmental policies with ASEAN sustainability standards? And what roles do you see other ASEAN countries playing, perhaps through green finance or carbon markets, in helping Timor-Leste reach its climate and blue economy goals?
We, as a small country, we recognize our vulnerability to things like climate change, the intensifying weather events that happen all around us. Only a few years ago, we experienced some of the worst cyclones to hit our country. Historically, cyclones don't really reach us. They rarely reach us. But when it hit us, 2 years in a row and brought in up to $400 million in destruction of infrastructure, of livelihoods. We have always been aware of this, and we have since supported every global initiative to fight climate change. So we are a party to the Paris Agreement. We also have instituted policies to manage our natural resources sustainably, to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, and also align ourselves with ASEAN's sustainability priorities. We've always believed that by working with other countries to strengthen global commitment to address things like climate change, etc., only then it can really help us to face the consequences of climate change.
You mentioned that tourism is another area of opportunity for Timor-Leste. ASEAN is a fast-growing regional economy with a combined GDP that now exceeds $4 trillion US dollars. How does Timor-Leste government see the opportunities for the future development of the tourism industry? Many other ASEAN countries, including Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, and Philippines, have a very vibrant and dynamic tourism economy. Can Timor-Leste also become a tourism hub?
Yes. So we are in a region, it's a dynamic region. The world recognizes Southeast Asia, especially the ASEAN region, as one of the most economically dynamic regions in the world. It's a region where very peaceful, although we have some issues along, Cambodia-Thailand border. These are isolated, conflicts that is not in any way affecting the economic activities of the region. Some issues in Myanmar, but overall, ASEAN region is where I think growth will be. It's a region of almost 700 million people, $4 trillion economy, and is attracting a lot of visitors when tourism is concerned. Millions and millions of people pouring to Indonesia, to Thailand, the Philippines, all over. And we are, a small country with 1.3, 1.4 million people, a small economy with a lot of potential for growth. And we don't expect millions and millions of people to pour into the country very soon. This is not at all in our imagination over the next couple of years or so, next 5-10 years. But even if we get something like 100,000 people visiting the country in a year, I believe it will already make a huge economic impact. So this is why we're looking at a type of tourism that is complementary to what is already existing around the region. We will not try to emulate Bali or Singapore or Phuket, but we will build something that is unique. It might not attract 1 million people, but if it can attract 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 high-paying tourists, it will make an impact already in the economy as we build slowly into a form of tourism that is sustainable, that is eco-friendly, that does not in any way impact on our fragile environment. At the same time, we offer the type of destination that is different. I often say to friends that we are what maybe Bali was like 50, 60 years ago. Still pristine, does not have a lot of development with impact on the environment around. The beaches are still in its pristine condition, a lot of wildlife. We also host whales every year, which migrate, have the seasonal migration that they have. And then the island off our shore, one of our main islands, the only island we have actually, has been identified as one of the islands with the most diverse marine ecosystems in the world. Recently, they have just found 100 to 200 new species of marine life around that island. So it's very, very clean, very pristine environment. We don't suffer from that type of overdevelopment, And so these are things that we would like to preserve. And I think this is what will make us different from other destinations. High value, that is exclusive, that is eco-friendly, with a lot of ecotourism, community-based tourism. For now, it will be type of tourism that we can manage sustainably. We definitely not looking into that type of mass tourism because it's something that we ultimately can have uncontrollable impacts on, on our development, socially as well as on our environment.
Australia is one of the closest neighbors of Timor-Leste geographically. How significant is the role being played by Australian companies in foreign direct investment into Timor-Leste in sectors such as mining and oil and gas?
Yes, in terms of foreign direct investment, Australia is one of our main sources. They have been involved in the oil and gas industry for the last 20 years. Their company is also one of the joint partners in the Greater Sunrise oil and gas field. Onshore, 2 or 3 Australian companies are directly involved in the exploration of mineral potentials in the country. Aside from that, they have been engaged economically in the country for many years. We also send our workers to Australia, working in Australia. So a lot of our remittances also comes from Australia. And they also provide us with support in terms of our development, our human capacity development. A lot of our students go or actually study in Australia. We have great diplomatic relations and people-to-people relations with Australia. These are ties that goes back at least 100 years.
Presumably, there may also be interest from Australian investors in the new areas of economic diversification, such as tourism and perhaps in the fisheries industry, where Australian companies and potentially the Australian government may also have scope for collaboration with Timor-Leste in developing those new sectors of the economy. What are your views about that future potential for collaboration in new areas?
Yeah, I think all the possibilities are there, but we don't only rely on Australia for investments. ASEAN countries, in fact, have had a lot more economic interest in the country than Australia is on its own. So we have a lot of investors from Singapore, from Vietnam, from Indonesia. Maybe in the future, we can see Australian investment in the country diversified away from mining and oil and gas and into other areas like tourism. But before that, I believe that the Singaporeans will come first. The Indonesians will probably be there first, or the Thais, the Vietnamese. Vietnam has had a telco company in the country going back now 15 years, at least. They are one of the main mobile communications providers. Indonesia has set up its own banks in Timor, 2 or 3 banks already for a while. The Portuguese is a bank. Australia has had a bank in Timor, but it has now been reduced to only, serving corporate banking needs. But I hope to see the growth of Australian investment a little bit more to maybe outcompete the rest of the ASEAN. But in any way, anyone who's interested to invest in the country is most welcome. We are a very, very peaceful country. We offer one of the best incentives for companies to invest in the region, at least, regardless if you're Australian or Indonesian or Singaporean. We are basically open for business.
The world is being transformed by the AI revolution and digitalization. How is Timor-Leste preparing for its own transition in AI, telecommunications, and digitalization? And how will this impact on the Timor-Leste economy?
We are still in the early stages of digital development. Our reconstruction has been, as you know, has been quite prolonged due to the destruction that we suffered since the birth of our country, basically. We have spent 15, 20 years now to rebuild our institutions, our infrastructure, etc. Recently, we have, I believe, concluded to connect the country to the international internet backbone. So the submarine cable has landed in the country. Now we are studying ways of delivering it, distributing it to the rest of the population. A lot of people have also signed up to Starlink. We also have a high, penetration of smartphones. I think 60-70% of our population actually have a smartphone. Internet coverage, although at the moment still not at the level, like at the broadband level, still limited in accessibility, but the internet, coverage is almost 100% throughout the country. The conditions are there to digitalize our economy, government institutions and everything. But I think it's a little bit more, for us to benefit from the digital age. I think a lot of education, training is also needed for our people. This is it's an ongoing area of priority. We have a digital transformation strategy that we recently that we published a couple of years ago, and that has set out the path for us in the future on the adoption of AI technology to build our own data centers. And now we are working on legislation to accompany that digital transformation. We recently passed laws around privacy, around internet security, cybersecurity. I think we have all the basics are there, and we are also, of course, working with our ASEAN partners as well. And the lead is going to come very soon because everything is sort of aligning themselves towards that point.
Mr. Ambassador, this has been a fascinating, wide-ranging discussion on the Timor-Leste economy. In conclusion, I'd like to get your thoughts on the medium-term outlook for the Timor-Leste economy.
Yeah.
And what are the main opportunities and challenges that lie ahead over the next 5 to 10 years?
As a country that emerged from near total destruction just a little over 20 years ago to build a country to where we are today. When we started, there were a lot of skepticism that we can be a viable country in the 5, 10, 20 years. And then, of course, the road has not been smooth yet. We have encountered a few challenges along the way. 2006, we had basically a security crisis, breakdown in law and order, which we took about a year to resolve, really, and then get back on track again. And today, as a country, we have a vibrant democracy. We have free and fair elections. Our media is free. Our policy debates, our political debates are free, and everyone's engaged. We have very high voter turnout in every election. And we also have a vibrant economy. I might say it's still has a lot of potential to be developed and catch up with the rest of ASEAN. But as member of ASEAN, these are things that are not far-fetched. These are things that we can achieve in the next, in the next 5, 10 years. We went from a poor country in the early 2000s, and now we are a member of ASEAN, a member of World Trade Organization, a member of some of the most respected regional and international organizations. We have secured our seat on the table in international negotiations, debates. We still need to move away from a state-led, state-funded economic development into an economy that is run by the private sector. This is going to be our main challenge over the next medium to long term, is to transition from a state-led, state-funded economy to a private sector-led economic development.
Ambassador Tilman, thank you very much for sharing your insights on Timor-Leste in this roundtable dialogue hosted by Asia Pacific Economics. It has indeed been an honor to have you as our guest speaker at this roundtable. I would also like to thank our audience for joining this roundtable. Please join us for our future roundtable events and do hit the subscribe button to keep updated on our future series of roundtable.
Thank you so much, Rajiv, for having me on the podcast.
Asia Pacific Economics is an economic research and advisory firm providing world-class geopolitical, macroeconomic, and country risk analysis to businesses, governments, and international organizations. With a team of globally recognized experts, Asia Pacific Economics delivers actionable intelligence, evidence-based forecasts, and bespoke advisory solutions, empowering clients to navigate complexity and seize opportunities in the Asia Pacific region and worldwide. Find out more at asiapacificeconomics.com or email info@asiapacificeconomics.com.